Welcome to Velocity Philosophy. In this episode, we talk with Danny Wilson in the UK, who's run a successful boxing program out of Sheffield Hallam University and also co-founded Boxing Science. We hear about his use of velocity-based training with boxers from all levels, from amateur up to professional, and the unique ways in which Boxing Science goes about training their fighters and also implementing VBT. Jay, do you have anything people should be listening out for in this episode?
Yeah, mate. So I think the biggest takeaway for me was the landmine punch assessment that he came up with using velocity. The UFC have now made that part of their assessment. So, and that's a protocol that he came up with himself. So, another interesting thing I thought was that even though it's Boxing Science, he doesn't let the technology interfere with the coaching, and he talks about how GymAware actually aids that process and doesn't hinder it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Will, anything else?
No, mate, I think that stood out for me as well, the way he was quite happy for application to, pave the way, when it comes to making assessments about the athletes, backed up by science, of course, but when the rubber hits the road, sometimes the research doesn't always pan out. So, let's get going. Let's do it.
Hi guys, thanks for having us on the podcast. It's going to be good to kind of explore our insights into velocity-based training. I don't get much chance to go into as much detail as I would do on this podcast today. So velocity-based training, I first came about it around about 2015. I went on a course, went on a workshop, but I didn't really start using it with athletes. I was very kind of in a traditional basis of getting athletes stronger. But as I started working with more professional boxers, I saw a real need for it because, first of all, that our athletes need to be fast and explosive. They're producing a lot of force in a very short amount of time. In a punch in action, it can range anywhere from 60 milliseconds to 150 milliseconds to just throw a backhand. So, and then they've got to produce about anywhere between 2 and 4 times their body weight in that punch. So they're producing so much force in a very short amount of time. And they don't really have a great weightlifting background. So they struggle on kind of maximum loads. In terms of their postural awareness, their ability to grind through that movement. And also, they're in a weight-making sport, so they're not wanting to put on too much muscle mass, and not wanting to work at max strength all the way through the camp because they're also a calorie deficit. It makes this maximum strength training an added danger, but also has a massive effect on the rest of their training. They've got to do high amounts of running, they've got to do sparring, they've got to do the pad work as well. The amount of training that boxer has to go through on a daily and a weekly basis is absolutely massive. So if I'm there trying to get their maximum strength up, we're not working towards a goal of, we're working towards a goal of making them stronger, but are we making them a better athlete? And because if we're affecting the rest of their training in the weight room, then we're not making them into a better athlete. So velocity-based training came around about 2016 for me. I started using it with a few different athletes to work on strength speed because we were trying to do Olympic lifting and they weren't getting the technique right, and it was taking ages to refine their technique. So we need to start working on strength speed at a lower weight load for squats and deadlifts. And even though it's a lower weight load and they should be able to move it faster, they were still grinding through that movement because they're not got that weightlifting background. But one thing that boxers are, they're very competitive. So if you give them a number to beat, then they're going to lift that weight with more intent and more speed. So I started using it 2016 on a range of different exercises, such as rack pull, back squat, trap bar deadlift. And then over the years, we've kind of started using it with a range of different exercises, such as trap bar jump, barbell bench press and bench throw. We also do the landmine punch throw as well. And we also do a landmine squat to press where we like kind of sitting down into lift, and like landmine squats press can end up being like a bit of a conditioning tool, and they kind of press it and then half like kind of push it towards the end range. But with the velocity, it's encouraging them to really drive through that movement, to drive through that kinetic chain, transferring energy from foot to fist. It's exactly what they need to do in the when they're punching. So yeah, so that's how I came about VBT around about 2015, started implementing it in 2016, and then it's a massive part of the program now to make sure that our athletes are optimizing their strength gains and working towards the demands of the sport, which is to be a fast and explosive athlete.
Do you still do? You mentioned Olympic lifts. Do you still do any?
Yeah, we do variations. So we do clean pull. We do power cleans sometimes. The reason why we don't maximize our kind of attention on Olympic lifting, because it takes a long time to learn, and we only have 10 to 12 weeks for each fight. And if an athlete is not in the optimal shape possible for that fight, then we're risking their career. So yeah, we've got a long-term vision, but we need to make an athlete as fit and as strong as possible every single fight. We always have the motto as every fight's a world title fight, because it's another step on your journey. So if I spend 6 to 8 weeks teaching that athlete to be able to clean on 40 kilos, we're not maximizing their strength and their speed. So, and as well, they're quite restricted in their shoulders and their wrists. They take a lot of impact forces through their wrists and elbows and shoulders on a daily basis. They throw about 1,000 punches in a session. So if they're undergoing this load on a daily basis, and then I'm getting them into a front rack position or doing a barbell snatch, I'm targeting them to become better weightlifters, but I'm not targeting them to become better athletes. So yeah, so we do clean pull, we do some cleans, we do some dumbbell split jerks, and also do landmine split jerk as well, which I do monitor using the gym aware. And the main thing that I'm saying about Olympic lifting, about optimizing the process, that's why I'm a big fan of velocity-based training, because there's no room for guesswork, no room for gimmicks. We're there to optimize that training process every single time. So when we do a strength speed block and a speed strength block, the gym aware gives us accuracy to make sure that we're optimizing performance. You know, boxing's a sport where, you know, if you're not in the best shape possible, you might lose, and it's a sport that you might unfortunately get seriously injured or die from it. So that's our approach, not just from weightlifting and using the gym aware, but from everything from nutrition to conditioning to tapering off for a fight. So we're in the mindset to not only make an athlete better, to perform better, but also to make them safer. So we're very much in the mindset that everything, there's no guesswork involved. Everything's very accurate, and we're optimizing that athlete to be in the best shape possible to be able to perform and be safe on fight night.
I'm just jumping in again, and then I'll pass to you, Jay. We hinted at a number of different ways that you use velocity-based training and the gym aware system. Can you just touch on each of the different, I guess, methods that you could sort of describe? So, exercise testing, fatigue monitoring, etc.
Yeah. So first of all, when an athlete comes into the gym, or at the start of a training camp and end of a training camp, we do a load velocity profile. So seeing how an athlete is able to produce speed at different loads going up towards their 1 rep max. We'll be able to predict 1 rep max, and then able to see what they can actually perform well. A lot of athletes have a better predicted 1 rep max to what they can actually lift. You don't often see that in other sports, such as like rugby, because they're used to weightlifting. They're used to being able to grind through their reps. Whereas like boxers, they get to about 90%, 95% 1 rep max, and they're unable to kind of grind through that movement They're unable to kind of keep that posture. So what we kind of highlight with that is that an athlete needs to maybe get a little bit stronger, through the posterior shoulders, through the core, and we look to try and overload their strength by doing like some partial range lifts. So an example that I'll probably use a little bit later on in this podcast. So I've got a flyweight boxer who, to give you a bit of perspective, has to weigh in at 50 kilos. So that's 8 stone. And he can deadlift about 110, but his predicted 1 rep max is about 120. So he's like going way above, like 2 times his body weight on the trap bar deadlift. But when he gets to like 110, he loses that posture because he's a tall athlete, but also he's not a very heavy athlete. He struggles to keep that posture. So with a load velocity profile, I'm able to see, right, actually, there's a lot more in the tank with you there, but why aren't we getting it? So we start adapting that program to work towards like some of these areas for improvement. And we probably wouldn't get that if we didn't have the gym aware, because if we just did a normal kind of max strength block without that feedback, we'd be thinking, yeah, he's all right there, but he's got around the posture, that's probably his max. Whereas like we know from his load velocity profile that he should be hitting 10 kilos heavier, or 10%, nearly 10% heavier than what his 1 rep max actually is. So yeah, so that's how we use it for assessments. We also do like some loaded barbell jump squats. We do that on a daily basis for fatigue monitoring, and we match that up with like a questionnaire of wellness. We also make sure that we, on the load velocity profile, that sets their velocities at different percentage 1 rep maxes. So when they go into a strength speed block and they're hitting 8% 1 rep max, we know exactly what velocity they should be hitting. If they've improved and took gains from that previous block, they should be hitting a little bit higher than the target speed. But sometimes it's a little bit lower. So we say around about 10%. If it's 10% lower, we will adjust the load to hit that velocity, because that happens quite often with our athletes. Because like I said in the previous question, these athletes are going through so much training and high training loads like conditioning and boxing and sparring, that it's very often that they come into my sessions in a fatigued state, and we need to know that from the first rep or the first set. So if they're not hitting their numbers, if they're 10% down on their numbers, I'll adjust the load. In terms of like what people do, I've seen a lot of people like kind of talk about on your podcasts is kind of the velocity decline and that kind of fatigue index from that. We don't really go anywhere above 3 or 5 reps on our protocols, because we're always working towards either maximum strength or strength speed. We don't really go anything above that, because we want to try and limit like any kind of muscular hypertrophy or fatigue or any soreness going into their sessions. So we mainly use the fatigue index of being 10% away from their target velocities based off the load velocity profile, and also if they're 10% down on their jump height as well at the start of the session.
Yeah. So where do you record those? Like, how do you sort of know what the load velocity profiles are for each athlete once you've recorded them? And then how do you program based off that? Do you just have like a sheet or something, or like how do you sort of program with the gym aware?
Yeah, I've got a special sheet that I've nicked off somebody, so I can't really take full credit for that. Somebody once said to me, "The best coaches are thieves," so I don't feel guilty for it. So yeah, so I've got a sheet that kind of gives like an R value, and the load velocity profile is such an accurate tool. You know, the R value is always like 0.9 or above. You know, when they do about 2 or 3 different loads, you probably could, even at like 50, 60 and 70% 1 rep max, you probably could predict their 1 rep max from just them 3 loads. So it is a really useful tool. So from that, it's a cut-off point. Like for a trap bar deadlift, would say like the velocity speed would be anywhere between like 0.35 to 0.4 meters per second, which is quite high for a trap bar deadlift. But like I said, for boxers, because of their posture and their inability to grind through that movement, their velocity cutoff for 1 rep max is a lot higher. But yeah, so use that. So I'll determine what their 1 rep max is from there, and then when we're going to like kind of programming, I'll then refer back to that sheet there. So I really work probably max out athletes around about 92% 1 rep max for maximum strength, and then for strength speed anywhere between 80 and 90%, and then speed strength is anywhere between 70 and 80% 1 rep max. We also use like trap bar jumps and loaded jumps, because we've actually done a little bit of research where we've seen that peak force development and rate of force development is higher when you do a trap bar jump at 50% 1 rep max than you would do actually doing trap bar deadlift at 1 rep max. 50% 1 rep max. So like I said, we're trying to optimize that process every single time. So we're thinking, right, we're going to get more bang for our buck using trap bar jump than we would do the trap bar deadlift. Give or take that the athlete can actually do a trap bar jump at 50% 1 rep max. It takes a lot of kind of learning skills and development and being able to jump and express force in that way for them to achieve a better kind of score on the 50% 1 rep max of the trap bar jump. So we start working them from about 30% and start working them up from there. But once them foundations are built, that trap bar jump is a much more useful tool to us to develop strength, speed and speed strength than it would do a kind of lower velocity, a higher velocity, lower percentage 1 rep max of trap bar deadlift. So yeah, so we use a low velocity profile and like we've got that sheet, and then we just kind of refer to that when we're doing the percentage 1 rep maxes.
Yeah, okay.
Did we, sorry if I've missed it, did you mention your LVP or load velocity profile protocol? Might be interesting to just touch on how you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we go, we kind of predict what their 1 rep max is going to be at the start. And we start off and around about 50% 1 rep max. We find that, like I said about the trap bar jumps, they struggle to produce that force and that intent at a really light load. So anything like kind of lower than 50% is a little bit of an outlier. Either really high or really low. It's really far out there. So we start around about 50%. And then I've got a very specific one that I've written out, but most times I'll just start putting weight on the bar and judging where they're at. So if we'll start off at 50%, and if it's a trap bar deadlift, I'll put on an extra 20 kilos. And then I'll put on an extra 15 kilos, and I'll put on an extra 10. And then we're getting close to their 90% 1 rep max just from there. I've just posted a post about Perla on my Instagram, where it's like basically slating like pre-match warm-ups for strength and conditioning coaches that basically is not interested. It's just all down to the kind of strength and conditioning coaches' interests to make this big fancy drill. And I'm in that mindset when I'm doing a load velocity profile that it's got to be as fast and as efficient as possible for that athlete, because like I said before, high training loads, they're on a diet, they're probably in a crappy mood when they're coming into the gym. Last thing I want to be doing is going, right, percentage, right, they need to be on 122.5 kilos now. It's not. It's going to make the process a lot longer. We want to make that process as time efficient as possible. So if I were doing a research project, I've got a very robust protocol, which I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to go back to it. But when I'm in the gym, I'm just like literally putting on the weights, 20 kilos, 10 kilos. When it gets to about 0.5 meters per second, then you start being quite smaller with increments. You probably might be putting on 5 or 2.5 and seeing how they go. But that's probably a good thing for the listeners to know, is that it doesn't have to be very technical. It don't have to be very kind of like going in certain increments, because if you get 5 data points on a load velocity profile, you will have a very robust profile. Like I said about the R value is going to be above 0.9 if you have 5 data points. And then 5 data points can really sit anywhere, but you just need to make sure that that obviously that's noted down, and then you're able to refer to having that kind of profile. You're then able to say either predicted, like kind of meters per second. So, for example, if we have an athlete that has done 130, 150 kilos, what are they going to be able to lift at 140 kilos? That's predicted on the chart. So you need to make sure that you've got that kind of velocity kind of covered through predicted, but also it's good to have them relevant loads as well. So making sure that you know how an athlete is performing at them same loads post camp or at the start of camp, how they're lifting at 130, how they're lifting at 140 kilos, etc. So yeah, so for a load velocity standpoint, as long as you get 5 data points, working towards 1 rep max, being careful with your increments, but not being too precise. But as long as you get them 5 data points, I think you've got a pretty robust protocol.
We should probably drop a little hint for people that don't have a spreadsheet that they've thieved, that you can do that in the GymAware cloud. There's a little options to run a 1RM and an LVP report, but that's if people are like wondering, how do you get 5 data points and then get a 1RM out of it? But I'm smiling. I was smiling during that because there's a lot of talk. I mean, we spend a lot of time listening to what the research is saying. And they get very, as you suggested, they get very particular. The research is about protocols and which one works better than others. And so the whole point of these interviews is to then see what happens when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
But you've just got to run them through the process. Although I am wondering, what instructions do you give the lifter? So specifically for these trap bar deads, do you give them any specific velocity-based instructions, like lift as fast as you can, or do you just focus on technique, move the bar and see what happens?
Yeah, you've got to give them a target, but you also got to coach them at the same time. Probably that's one of my biggest mistakes when I started doing velocity-based training. I was like that with the iPad and being like that, like over and not really focusing. And Boxing Science, obviously, we're an online business, so I take a lot of videos. And I was taking the videos and I could see myself on the iPad and see the athlete, that the athlete weren't performing the technique as well as what I'd like them to. So the main thing is to make sure that that technique is right. Telling them to lift it as fast as possible. If they're the back end of camp and they're going towards a fight, I'll give them a target to hit. Even though that is not strict science, I don't really care as long as the athlete is feeling confident in hitting them numbers. And the last thing that they want to do is when they get to their results and go, because I keep repeating it, but they're going to be quite fatigued when they come into the sessions, especially when they're towards the back end of camp, lost quite a bit of body mass. They're going to be lighter than what they were before, and they're going to be approaching it quite lethargic. They're going to be lifting. Oh God, I've got to do this? Feel knackered. I'm on doing 1,500 calories in a day. So they, when they lift, they probably lift it quite slow without that feedback. And if I go to results, actually 10% down on where you were at the start camp, and then they've got to go into a fight, that might affect their confidence, but it might also affect their buy-in to your strength program. I'm like, what's the point in doing all this work if my results are going to be down? Yeah. So you've got even though it's not strict science, I'll give them a target. So if they've got 0.55 meters per second, I'll tell them and I'll shout it out at them and shout it like, go on, a bit faster. And if at the start of the load velocity profile, if they're a little bit slower at 60% 1 rep max, I don't put on the weight until they've like kind of hit very close to that kind of target, because it's like if they're like 10% behind or 5% behind on 6% 1 rep max on the load velocity profile, and if you put more weight on the bar, they're not going to suddenly start lifting that as fast. It's going to keep declining. And if you go right a little bit behind on that, I want you to get better at this load before we move on. And then they hit that target, and then that kind of kickstarts like their intent on heavier loads. So yeah, so it's not strict science. It's a little bit naughty at times because you're giving them that feedback. It should be blind, but what do we use the GymAware for? We use it to optimize the process and give the athletes motivation to lift with speed and intent. So if you can't do that on a load velocity profile, when can you do it?
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really helpful because one, from the outside looking in, velocity-based training sounds really complex. GymAware can look complex in using it, but what you've just described is there is science involved. It's just sitting behind what the athlete can see. They don't actually need to see the science. They don't need to know it all.
Yeah.
They see a target. They see whether they met it or not, and they get some good guidance from the coach. And you know that there's some really good science behind what's happening after that, their reactions to it. So I actually really like how you're describing your process.
Yeah, I'm informed by science, but I'm not particularly led by it. You can't be really sticking to the science all the time when you're in the weight room. You need to be practically applied. You need to do what makes it work. If you're just thinking about different protocols and percentages all the time and sticking to the scientific rules, then you're not going to get the most out of your sessions. So yeah, so I think like you're saying, like people can be quite intimidated when we start talking about velocity-based training, and it can be quite complicated. We make it complicated sometimes when we're talking about building up our programs, working on different exercises, working at different percentages, building up our database. Very, very complicated. We're not saying that every athlete or coach should be listening to this and thinking, right, we need to do all this and follow the protocols and everything like that. What I say is start using it, start getting some feedback. It's just like keeping a training diary and keeping your times on your spars and keeping times, reflecting on your spars and, how fast you do a 5K or 10K and everything like that. Why not monitor your ability to produce force and have a diary of your performances at every single session?
One question that I did have, something that we get asked quite a lot, and I know there's a bit of research that's about to come out around this, but in terms of the load velocity profiles, how often would you test an athlete to see if that's sort of changed? Would it be part of every camp, or is it?
Yeah, so we do a pretty robust one at the start and end of camp. But we'll take some kind of relative measures like midway through camp as well. I think that's really important because an athlete can get a lot stronger in a short amount of time. So then that skews your kind of velocity, velocity profile. So I think it's important definitely to do it at the start and end of camp. But I'm gonna plug a video here on YouTube. It's a strength and power session with Callum Bearder at Boxing Science, and on that video, I'm introducing the next phase of like doing a load velocity profile at the start, and then 4 weeks later, it's made like 10-15% improvements on his velocities already because he started in a detrained state. To be honest, it's not like I've got this magical program that gets 10-15% changes straight away, but it started in a detrained state,
Yep.
So I knew going into the next phase that, Pulmonec has made some big improvements here. I need to do another one now. So mostly I would do it like anywhere between like 6 to 10 weeks apart, but sometimes it can be like 3 to 4 weeks to just take some measures and go, right, I need to change the load velocity profile here. But you kind of get, when to recognise that is probably when they are hitting 10% higher than the targets. Then you're just like, right, I need to do it. So it's not like any kind of formula when to do it. I think if the numbers are far off from your targets, I think that's the time to then start doing your load velocity profiling again.
Fine, for sure.
Do you do any extra testing with other technology to support what you see with GymAware? So let's say we spoke with Phil Durrow a few weeks back, and he was talking about how if he sees a bit of fatigue, he might do a quick testing with the GymAware unit, but then he'll back it up with another piece of technology, maybe an omega wave reading or something. Do you have a suite of tech, or do you just rely on the GymAware unit?
Yeah, we don't use omega wave, even though it looks like a cool piece of kit. There's a lot of kind of athlete dependency on that. We've got only a handful of athletes that will be able to fill in a questionnaire on a daily basis. So that's what we do. We do a wellness questionnaire, a rating of 1 to 5, with 1 being that you're feeling absolutely terrible and 5 that you're feeling great. And we monitor 4 different things: energy levels, sleep quality, muscular soreness, and readiness to train. And we refer to that. So let's say if an athlete has got like kind of like poor jump height, we'll go, right, let's have a look at the wellness. What's happening here? Are they sore? Or the sleep quality isn't right? What is the training load looking like as well? So look at it from like a holistic global approach as well. So not only do we look at that wellness, but we look at what's affecting that wellness. Is there been a spike in their conditioning loads, or has there been a spike in their boxing training loads? So we cover all that. So with the conditioning loads, it's typical like kind of speed, RPE, the amount of reps and sets that you do, and obviously duration as well. And then with boxing training is a simple duration times RPE, and just getting a good insight to what they're actually doing as well. So they fill out a questionnaire of like whether they've done pads, bags, done open sparring, everything like that. And then we use like a range of different. So if we use heart rate monitors to obviously monitor the high intensity interval training sessions, we use the curve. So we get like the Woodway curve, where they like kind of monitor their speed on whilst they're running. We use a Bison to analyse their lactate, so we can do a lactate profile, a little bit similar to a load velocity profile, see how they react to increased intensities.
Yeah.
And also we monitor their performance during the sessions as well with the Bison. We do some very particular high intensity interval training protocols where we need them at a certain kind of lactate level. So we use that as well. So there's a range of different things. So we use the OptiJump as well to assess their jump height, to see how they can express force with no weight load whatsoever. Obviously you can do that with a wooden dowel and GymAware as well, if you haven't got access to an OptiJump. So there's a range of different technology that we use.
So do you do any, I guess, formal, or can you talk about any informal education that you embark on with your athletes?
Yeah, so obviously we give them feedback all the time in terms of where they're performing, and obviously increases in performance as well. We also say about kind of what their load velocity profile is and what kind of athlete they are and what they need to work on. So we're saying about Kyle, the flyweight boxer that I was talking about, giving him feedback, right, this is the reason why we're working on these like kind of top loaded lifts, because we're wanting to increase your performance in this area, the very top kind of maximum strength load, because this is what you're struggling with. And they don't need to know all the technical terms, but they need to know the reason why they're doing it, so they get that buy-in. And then obviously at the end of camp, we want to show how much they how much they are improving on a camp by camp basis. We also do we also explain like kind of what kind of athlete they are. Are they a strong athlete, or are they more explosive and a faster athlete? And we'll say, right, these are areas for improvement, but this is what we're going to focus on as well to make your strength into super strengths. Again, that'll get them really engaged with a certain exercise. So if an athlete is more explosive, we go, right, we're going to be working on trap bar jumps with you at 40%, 50% 1 rep max, because this is your baby. Yeah, this is where you're going to really thrive in this. So if they're thinking, this is my area, they're going to start really putting some force and intent into that, into them lifts, and getting the most out of that.
Yeah.
And then as well, we do a load velocity profile using a landmine punch. So this is kind of like going away from the recommended exercises on the GymAware app, but being innovative. So we do like we always struggle for like to assess like punch force and estimated punch force, because we haven't got a punch dynamometer, and even if we did, we'd be thinking that it might be quite dangerous for an athlete to go in full force and hitting a bag with a force plate in. And there's different elements to a powerful punch as well. There's timing, there's speed, there's accuracy. We've had big, powerful guys. I'd say that I'd be able to throw a landmine faster than most boxers, but I won't be able to punch as hard as them. But it gives us a good understanding of their ability to produce force in a punch specific action. So we started off with the med ball throws, but then we struggle with athletes that aren't able to throw a ball. All they've done is box all their life. They're also struggling with the trajectory and getting the right target. There are lots of different things that we're making that as not as accurate as what we wanted. So around about late 2015, we started having to play about with a landmine punch protocol. So this is them in a punching stance, so either orthodox or southpaw, and it's a rear hand punch. And basically, they throw in the bar as fast as possible, and we go incremental loads. We go at 20 kilos, so no weight on the Olympic bar, 25, 30, 35, and then 40 kilos. Mainly now we only do the 20 kilos and 30 kilos because some athletes aren't able to even do the 40 kilos. But the original kind of profile was towards like doing a total 40 kilos. Then from there, we're able to see whether an athlete is fast or they force dominant in a punching action between the left and right hand. So that helps us define what their program should be, and what kind of like punch specific exercises that they should do. So we do like a range of different punch specific exercises to help transfer that force from foot to fist through a punch specific action. We can do something heavy like a landmine punch, or we could do something really like a med ball punch throw. So if an athlete is very force dominant, we'd probably go towards improving their speed, their hand speed, because they've got that force. If they increase their speed as well, they will start punching a lot harder. So we'll start doing like kind of med ball punches and very much lighter work with them. Whereas like a lot of boxers will be probably very fast at the 20 kilos, but then struggle to transfer that when they add that 10 kilos on. So then we start doing like kind of heavier punch specific work with them, such as like the landmine punch. As well, it tells them like kind of the imbalances between left and right. A lot of the time, their left hand is faster than their right hand. So the jab hand is faster than their right hand. But then when it gets up to 30 kilos, the right hand takes over. So that's very force dominant. And then the left hand is very fast, very like kind of speed dominant, because obviously they're flicking out the jab. They're throwing their punches in a different way on their jab than they would do with their rear hand. So that gives us an indication of, right, we need to do a lot of kind of unilateral training with this boxer, a lot of single arm work, maybe do mobility work through their left hand if they're not able to transfer that force through their left side. So yeah, so that low velocity profile for the landmine punch is a very popular method of testing method within boxing science for the boxers. And also the UFC Performance Institute took that on board as well. I'm not sure what their standards are, but it did come with a word of warning, because the first time that I did it, I kind of just went into it silly. I didn't start off with a student boxer or an amateur boxer. I started off with it was a current IBF welterweight world champion, Kell Brook. He was an absolute beast, and he was throwing a 20 kilo bar at me. I didn't have no landmine attachment in. It just basically into this corner of a squat rack, throwing the bar at me, and he nearly killed me. Still got the videos now of me in slow motion, just eyes wide and going, oh god. So, and he did some damage that day to my hands, but yeah, so a little bit thrown in at the deep end, but that makes it easy now. When athletes are throwing the bar at me, throwing anywhere between 4 and 5 meters per second, I'm able to catch a 20 kilo bar quite easy, because I was throwing it at the deep end with Kell Brook then many years ago.
Yeah, the young guys to do it, don't you?
Pardon?
You just get the young guys catching the bars now.
Oh yeah. I like getting some of the interns doing it just for the first time. I did one once. I've got had this heavyweight back in the day, 6'8" heavyweight, and I just went to intern. He hadn't caught one before, because I was doing it all, and I was just go and catch Dave's landmine punch for you, and he was like shaking and getting thrown back with it. That is a skill though. It's got to be coached. Most people, when they do the catching the landmine punch throws on the courses, they're very kind of stood back and not wanting to get involved. You kind of need to approach it a little bit like a fight. You need to be more aggressive and meet that bar head on and make sure catching it. The more kind of scared of the bar you are and standing further back, the more dangerous that exercise becomes.
I was just looking at your YouTube channel as we were talking. So if anyone's interested, you can get on there and you can. There's a few videos. Actually, it's in a few videos, the landmine work. So if they just browse, they're going to see examples of what you're talking about. If they're not familiar with the landmine press already. I was just thinking while you're talking. The taking in fighters, particularly fighters who've been fighting for a while, so like you said, they've just been boxing for X amount of years, similar to taking in a beginner lifter. And some of the, I guess, people who are a bit more cautious with velocity-based training suggest not using it with beginner lifters at all. And I'm just curious what your thoughts on that would be.
Yeah, I think that you need to start building the foundations first, 100%. But it doesn't hurt to get a measure and to make sure that they're still lifting with speed and intent. So I've got a couple of athletes in mind that never kind of got beyond that level where they would start we're going to do a very robust velocity-based training program, where we're working at 8% 1 rep max and we're lifting as fast as you can, and you've got to hit them numbers. But we're working with athletes that are not used to having that lifting with speed and intent. They're used to bodyweight circuits, not used to lifting under load and having to express that force. We're wanting to increase the rate of force development. So in the first camp, I wouldn't go, right, this is a load velocity profile and these are velocities that I want you to hit at this percentage 1 rep max. I'll probably take the load velocity profile, I'll see what they're like to start off with, and then as they get onto key lifts, give them feedback on their lifting speed. So then they're increasing that rate of force development, they're increasing that speed and intent of the lift. So I think that there needs to be an element of building the foundations, working on you're working on your ability to lift load. You know, you're not going to be set like a percentage one max protocol with a beginner athlete, because they should be getting stronger every single session. You know, when you go to a gym with an athlete for the first time, there's 5, 10, maybe even sometimes 15 kilo increments each week as an athlete is getting used to doing a trap bar deadlift or doing a squat. But I think it's still useful for them to have that kind of feedback of the velocity, so they are, like I said, performing that exercise with speed and intent, because when they're learning, they're most likely to just go slow and grind through the movement. So it's like, one, you're learning the exercise, but then you're learning how to express force that will improve your strength and speed and give you some pretty fast adaptations in the initial camps.
Yeah. So, in terms of like other coaches, other boxing coaches, and other athletes, do you think that they should obviously consider velocity-based training, and do you see any like drawbacks from it, or anything that they should be aware of? I know you mentioned obviously it's good to build foundation, and you also mentioned before that you know it's you need to coach at the end of the day. You know, you can't have your face, your iPad in your face, and be too immersed in the tech. At the end of the day, you've got to coach. But is there anything else that you can sort of think of, or any advice you'd give to people that are listening, if anyone's listening?
Yeah. As if anybody's listening, they might switch off by now. But yeah, I think that the main thing, what I kind of look back on, because I like thinking, what mistakes have I made with velocity-based training? That was one of them. Kind of looking at the iPad and not looking at the athlete, and having that ability to coach. One of the advices would be, make sure that you're building them foundations first.
Yeah.
Getting an athlete strong is the most important thing, especially for boxers, because, like I said, they're not strength athletes. So they need to learn the ability to lift load and produce force, and then start working on the kind of strength, speed, and the trap bar jumps and the stuff that we've been talking about today. And then I think as a practitioner, I think one of the most the biggest mistake that I've probably made is not being as strict with my data in terms of data collection. We're talking about load velocity profiles. We only did that with certain fighters because we were doing the velocity-based training, but we should have got load velocity profiles from every single boxer that stepped through the doors since 2016. When we started using it, we were only using it with the top athletes that kind of earned that right to do velocity-based training, or being on a one-to-one basis. Obviously, with a group setting, it's harder to do it. But we should have made that extra effort to make sure that everybody that came through them doors did a load velocity profile, take their body mass at that time. So then we create them standards of what athlete and what does a boxer look like. You know, we have got a good database. We've got about 20 athletes that have done a load velocity profile, but that could have been so much more if I were like kind of switched on at the start, taking in the data. I've got a lot of data from them athletes doing velocity-based training as well, but they're all in different spreadsheets. So it's like basically to on an athlete by athlete and a camp by camp basis. If you get obviously you've got the Gym Aware Cloud, which is a great tool, but if you're wanting to have it all kind of like in one space as well, that's going to be kind of accessible and for the athlete as well. Like making sure that you're recording that from all in one sheet. So that's what we started to do midway through last year. We've just got one big database, and each athlete has got like a tab, and we're able to then kind of see kind of how they're lifting, how they're performing as well. Obviously, you can do that on the Gym Aware Cloud as well.